And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we have Dr. Joe Marion here, and we're going to talk about Indiamese. One of the things that we hear all the time, we've heard this from this Dead Doctors Don't Lie guy, I'm not going to mention his name, and one of the more important points is that you need to have minerals in your body, but we have at the Nutrimed line the top awarded minerals, which are tracks amino acid protein chelates. And the reason is, if you have an ionic form, even if it's a nanoparticle ionic form, it has to compete with the same transport mechanisms. One of the technologies that's in our QRMA, quantitative resonant magnetic analysis, is it actually picks up the harmonic resonant field of your minerals. And if your mineral concentrations are not correct, and most people don't know this, but all minerals in the active state of enzymes are in a monoatomic form. Some of those minerals, like iodine, are actually a form of superconductor, which conducts electrons to the cytochromes that makes your high energy ATP and NADH. But most people are not aware that the conformational proteins that actually regulate your DNA are all based on harmonic resonance of minerals. So the nucleoplasm concentration of your minerals determines whether your DNA is actually transcribed, creates messenger RNA, and actually determines the Kmax or maximum enzyme activity and the production of structural and enzymatic proteins in your cells. So if you're trying to heal your body, and I'm going to be writing an anti-aging book I'm putting together after a number of years of research. It's based on some of the principles of the Zero Senescence Society and organization and the anti-aging organizations with Dr. Aubrey de Grey, the European and the North American A4M, American College of Anti-Aging Medicine, which I'm one of the teachers in. And one of the most important principles, and again, there's a number of principles. You need to have mineralization, maximum optimized mineralization of your DNA and your nucleoplasm to induce your genes. You need to have extracellular matrix. You need DNA modulating peptides, which we also, by the way, have access through the European Anti-Aging Society, which if people do a private consult, I can obtain them for them. We need to have maximum oxygenation, but one of those top key principles is you have to optimize the minerals. If your body even has in the diet an adequate intake of minerals, but it can't transport them to your cells and your nucleoplasm, you will not get maximum effect of the pineal gland in terms of growth and hormone release and your hypothalamus and pituitary. You won't get maximum enzyme activity to heal your blood vessels walls, and you can't, quote, clone yourself as you do sequentially every night into the future unless you have good toner. And part of that toner, if you want to call it, is not a silver bullet, it's a silver orchestra, but one of those key instruments in the orchestra is Indiamese. Tell us why, Dr. Joe, Indiamese transforms people's health. I take it every day. It's amazing, isn't it?
Indium, number 49 element on the periodic table, seventh rarest mineral on Earth, prevents a lot of these mineral deficiency diseases. Everything is mineral deficiencies. You probably absorb maybe 20% of the minerals in the food you eat. And you're always in a deficiency state. You're thought to use 4 to 14% of your brain power or gland power. Well, that's pretty pathetic. Now, if we can raise the mineral intake through our patented process with this indium for the first time in history, raise minerals 60 to 300%. Now your DNA can really key in on the mineral foods that it needs to pick up, like you say, in a monatomic state, and actually put them into the cell, cytoplasm, and so forth, to perform whatever functions, neurotransmitters, hormones, enzymes, antibodies, and so forth. You're going to have a 2 or 3 times better chance of rebuilding your cells. We're calling it level 2 or level 3 of cellular metabolism. Only available with the 7th rarest mineral on Earth, indium, Indiamese, the silver bullet.
Now, the important thing that people should recognize is we can now pick up the harmonic frequencies. I've been doing research with the last 2.5, 3 years with the quantitative resonant magnetic machine and also the Chinese version of the Russian Metatron. And over the last 6 months, I've been actually able to pull off, when they do the metatherapy, which is harmonic frequency therapy through the hydrophones and the Russian and Chinese version called a bioplasm expert in clinical, I can actually pull off the frequencies for harmonic resonant treatment of your DNA. But they're all dependent on the minerals. If the minerals aren't present, if the extracellular matrix isn't present, like in a fetus, if the conditions are not present to actually rebuild you and photocopy you into the future with a high, what I call, resolution and a high signal-to-noise ratio, you're not going to do well. And as one system starts to fail, it starts to cause multi-system organ failure. It's called like the death signal, you want to call it. And most people don't realize it might be as simple as just being deficient in mineral like magnesium or manganese or molybdenum. For example, we give people in India, and people say they wanted to stop high altitude pulmonary and cerebral edema. I tell them to take two things. Take our Minerals Plus, Vitamin Mineral Max, which gives them molybdenum, and take Indiamese. And they say, well, why is that? I said, because the enzymes that make nitric oxide to prevent pulmonary hypertension and cerebral edema are dependent on those minerals. And when those minerals are optimized, you're going to produce nitric oxide, which not only lowers blood pressure, but improves perfusion to the brain high altitude. And the lungs, you don't develop pulmonary hypertension. Interesting. And that's how simple it is. Just take Indium and our Minerals Plus with molybdenum, and you'll optimize the molybdenum concentration in your pathways, and you can take things like Supernox, which induces nitric oxide synthase, and a little bit of beet juice powder. So you have some organic nitrates. And that's it. And people say, oh, you need a complex formula. No, you don't. It's real simple. But with Indium, you massively increase that level of mineralization. You know, we have the best formulas in the world, but you want to even make them better? Add Indiamese. And it's easy.
Now, I'll tell you, this is very good therapy, as you're saying. Very simple and easy once you get the products in-house. Right. To help these poor PTSD veterans returning home with all kind of shell shock. All these people they're talking about now that are heroin addicts. With Indium, you can help break physical addictions. Here's another one, alcohol. With Indium, your liver is going to put out or process 3 times as much alcohol as normal. Normally, you're going to process, say, an ounce of alcohol per hour. With Indium, you can't get drunk because you'll be processing an ounce of alcohol every 20 minutes. Right. So therefore, there won't be any more, a lot less drunk driving, head-on collisions, people swerving. You won't be able to get as drunk. You have to drink 3 times as much to get as drunk, so that you won't be having those disability problems. Not to mention all the athletes who are getting concussion traumas. And I really have a heart for the vets. These guys need to be given a bottle of Indium as soon as they hit the stateside, or even while they're over there.
What it does is hardens your cells against oxidative stress. The primary thing that happens when you get an autonomic outflow, what's called the sympathetic or fight-or-flight reaction of your autonomic nuclei, is you get induction of what's called microglial activation of peroxynitrate and nitroperoxy radical. And if you actually were able to scan it using a positron emission tomography scan, which I've done, you'd see that these centers are lit up and they're really super active. Because they're super active, they're generating, and eventually they cause atrophy. So you can actually see volumetric changes on a T1 weighted MRI scan of the nuclei of the brain, where these autonomic nuclei are regulated by the hypothalamus. People say, oh no, you can't prove that. Yes, Dr. Deagle, I can prove it. I can also measure organic acids in your urine and show the metabolites show your brain, those nuclei are burning themselves out. Now, if you give the proper mineralization to stop oxidative stress and rebalance things, the nuclei start to regress and their inflammatory reactions. The nuclei start to rebuild themselves, and you actually see volumetric improvement. Well, so when people think, what is PTSD? The current treatment of PTSD is to turn people into zombies with all kinds of sedating drugs or narcotics or God knows what they're giving them. The problem is that is not the physiological process that you're trying to intervene at. That's why I recommend things like Indiamese, hyperbaric oxygen, things to rebuild the brain. We have actual brain-modulating peptides now, as well as our nutraceuticals that'll protect the brain and stop oxidative stress, like our acetylglutathione, which is our cell detox glutathione, Nutritrala, Regenerex. Specific nutraceuticals that help to rebuild the brain, like docosahexaenoic acid, sphingolin, etc., for the myelin basic protein. But Indiamese is an amplifier. It's almost like turning up the volume. Whatever you're doing, add Indium, and it's going to get better, faster, quicker, and farther. That's how important it is.
Get the feeling of easy living.
Yeah, easy living. I love that. Indium easy living. Should add that word living at the end of it. And welcome back. And so we have Emil de Toffel talking about less EMF. I want you to go over some of the new products that are available, Emil. And we have, I think today we have actually 2 segments rather than 1. So we have lots of time to talk about the idea of scalar frequencies. I'm also going to get into the idea of scalar frequencies, how they can be harmful to your health because they actually transform the modulatory proteins or peptides that regulate your DNA. And we now are working out the mechanism of exactly what living things are. And it's important to understand that the Schumann resonance of the Earth itself actually brushes the electrons, the outer orbitals, with specific harmonic, what's called entraining frequencies. And in fact, if you go into near space, even 300 miles above Earth in an orbit, you actually have such a decrease that your DNA starts to unwind and not properly interact with the cells. It was discovered by the Russians in the space station that without a Schumann resonance generator, which we have in our micropulse, you just cannot express and even activate stem cells. But if you have bad entraining frequencies, you can shut on and off genes. And there's a new theory of cancer. In fact, I'm posting up this article on cancer that is really important to people understand. Cancer, in a sense, is a return to an embryonic state of cells that are responding to stress, and they start to lose their normal control of tissues. And therefore, they start to switch on and off genes to survive. They're in survival mode. So that if you don't stop scalar frequencies from switching mode power supplies, Wi-Fi networks, and cell phones, electrosmog in general, you're going to cause harm. And if you get exposed to excessive higher energy ultraviolet light like UVB, C, and D, you're also going to induce not only cancer, but epigenetic changes. We now know that many of the drugs people take are photoactivated and actually are oncogenic when exposed to cancer. So if you're taking things like oxytetracycline, Levaquin, etc., antibiotics, you cannot go out in the sun because the activated by solar UV light turns into oncogenic toxic chemicals in your blood just by coursing through your skin. Isn't that interesting?
It's both interesting and scary because particularly when you think about how we can be exposed to these things unknowingly and 24/7, depending on our living environment and our working environment.
Right. Well, our body hasn't adapted over millions of years to be able to detect electropollution. We would know that, for example, the only time when electropollution is significant is when there's lightning storms and so on, and most people would be staying in their cave or in a secure place, and it would be relatively transitory. Nowadays, people are exposed to high levels of heavy metals. For example, the lead level in our bones in North America is 300 to 400 times higher than that of someone that died 300 years ago in northern Scotland. The fact is our biology is breaking down. We're now seeing a drop in human IQ. Fertility, 20% of all couples are infertile, even without any sexually transmitted diseases as an underlying cause. We know that human intelligence is decreasing. Fluoridated water, the Chinese discovered that fluoridated water, in the areas of the cities that they fluoridated, they found no children with an IQ over 170. The only places where they found children with an IQ 170 are in isolated rural areas where there's no fluoridated water because it calcifies the pineal gland and the pacer nuclei of your brain, because your intelligence is not determined solely by your cortex. It's by the pacer nuclei that determine how you set up neural networks in your brain. And the problem is if you're jamming those cycles and the DNA and the actual physiological processes, you're not going to have normal expression of what called the fullness of your genetic or your genome and epigenome. You're going to end up jamming it, and jamming the communications that's going to screw up your biology. And people don't get it. They're going to get it because if I put someone, for example, through a QRMA or bioplasm that looks at the bioplasmatic body and the harmonic resonant body, I can see what's going on with people. Even electropollution, the QRMA will pick it up. But you can actually see it on the bioplasm expert in clinical. You can actually see the bioplasmatic body disturbed by electrotoxins. That's what I call them, electrotoxins. It's a better term than just electrosmog. What new technology do you have now? Well, yeah, what new technology do you have that's available to help people now in 2016 that can help them, number one, identify the problem, but also screen and protect their body from it because it's silent. There's no taste, no smell. They may be agitated or have insomnia or may have rashes or other migratory polyarthritis, but most people aren't symptomatic, even though the Klinghardt Research Institute actually has discovered that on scanning electron microscopy and phase contrast microscopy, they've been able to identify that 100% of people and their cells and tissues of all living things are responding to electropollution by things like the closure of neural pores and ion channels in the outer cell membrane. And so there's not a percentage that are exposed that are having changes. It's 100%. But only 1/3 of those are actually having significant symptoms that they feel disturbed by it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's particularly disturbing because we might hear from someone who says, well, I've been using my cell phone for years, or I've been sitting in front of my computer 8 hours a day for 10 years now, and I don't feel it. Well, you may not feel it initially,
right.
but as Dr. Deagle mentioned, that the biological changes are occurring, whether you feel them or not, they are
right.
occurring, and B, they are doing damage. In addition to that, we hear from a lot of people from all around the world who are feeling it, or at least making the connection between their exposure and symptoms that they have later on, maybe later that day or even the next day, with the sleeplessness, with the irritability, with the agitation, with the palpitation in the chest, with burning skin or eyes. So many of these symptoms can be delayed because it takes some time for the toxicity to build up in the body, or just takes time for the biochemical chain to activate and release the hormones that circulate and cause these damages.
Exactly. And you can measure these markers too, by the way.
Or your body may just be insensitive to those kind of changes in the sense that you don't feel them, but it doesn't mean that they're not taking place. You can take a blood test and you can see these changes taking place. So what do you do about it? I want to mention a situation where people might not have good control over their sleeping environment. For example, what happens if you need to go spend the weekend with your in-laws, or you're traveling and you need to stay in a hotel, or you're away from a place, from your normal home environment where you need to sleep, you need to get your body rested, and you need to recover from your exposure during the day. The good news is there's a couple of very convenient traveling shielding that you can bring with you. There's shielded bed sheets, shielded duvet cover, which is simply a cover that...
Yeah, continue. I can hear you. I think we may have lost our connection with... Okay, let's reconnect and we'll connect them. So, yeah, you have a duvet cover that'll actually block the radiation. So, it's important to understand we have ways now of measuring electropollution from smart meters, Wi-Fi networks. You can block it now with things like sterilizers on the A/B channel of your home. We actually have step-down transformers, things that will actually, when you plug your thing into wall, say for your laptop, those devices that turn the AC current into DC, they generate electropollution and a field effect around it. So, if those things or dimmer switches, lights, etc., that are near, say, the head of your bed or clocks, they're generating electropollution that are entraining your brain and your tissues in toxic ways. We'll be back in a minute. We'll reconnect with Emile de Top. And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. I want to go over a couple of other things. Bruce is away in France at Summit to Sea, a conference there where he's actually presenting some of his new technical advances on the Summit to Sea chambers. And I want to go over a little bit of the interesting information we're discovering. I'm putting together an anti-aging ebook, and I'll have an article which is a summary, and people can purchase the ebook, which will explain some of the newer and updated principles. I've done YouTubes in the past. In fact, I remember somebody the other day saw one from, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago on a conference that I did that was later put up on YouTube. And the latest research, we're talking about the Anti-Aging Institute. Will be working with a number of the European Anti-Aging Division and the Russian Anti-Aging Division of the Institute, and some new, not only biomolecules, but new technologies. What we have here in Nutrimedical is if you're going to reverse aging, you have to actually fix the metabolic pathways, you have to detox the body, you have to reactivate the DNA, you have to translate the signals to the DNA, and you have to optimize mineralization. One of the most important things is oxygen. And I tell people the Power of Ones, which you'll see in the Dr. U book, which I strongly recommend everybody that listens to the program get the Dr. U book, because it'll explain the principles of what functional medicine is, which is all-encompassing. It encompasses surgery, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, herbology, acupuncture, energy meridians, biophysics, toxicology, stealth pathogens, genetics, epigenetics. It covers everything. And functional medicine is 100 times more information than the entire medical system. And the medical system itself, the conventional medical system, is 100 times more than, quote, just plain herbology, and we call it complementary medicine. What functional medicine does is it transforms it so that we have not only a combination of things like conventional advanced imaging, such as quantitative electroencephalograms, organic acids, genetic analysis of DNA, epigenetic analysis of organic acids and metabolites. And when you provide oxygen to the tissues, you optimize and alkalinize tissues. You provide enough energy to you can create the ATP and NADH. And of course, you need the right nutraceutical molecules like NADH, our acetyl L-carnitine, which is also present, for example, in Cognition Plus, ALC 1000. We have, of course, the most advanced CoQ10 in the world, which is the only non-polymerizing CoQ10 anywhere. We have Omega Supreme krill with the only source that actually has proven in every batch astaxanthin, the most powerful krill oil ever available. In fact, remember, and I won't mention the name of the doctor, but one of our anti-aging docs, he says, take 2 of these little red pills, which are kind of like dark reddish, the krill oil soft gels, and call me when you're 100. Because the astaxanthin and not only is one of the most important anti-aging molecules ever found, but it also protects your blood vessels and your arteries in your brain. And so we're putting a combination of technologies together, including even developed by the Russian Anti-Aging Society and the European Anti-Aging Society of biopharmaceuticals that actually modulate DNA, and are anti-aging molecules that regulate your epigenetics. So start off with, you have at the Summit to Sea, we have the shallow dive, which is the smallest chamber, affordable chamber that people can get into. It actually can be used portably too, so you can pack it up and take it with you if you travel, go on cruises or whatever, put it on a bed. The shallow dive features are very affordable. They also have the dive, which is a larger chamber, and of course the grand dive, which can be not only a 40-inch portable chamber, it can be mounted horizontally or vertically, but also the vertical grand dive, which is really neat. It is they now have a new vertical grand dive that's going to be even, I think, 7 or 9 inches taller. The current one, I think, is 5 foot tall. The new one will actually be 5'9", so that people that are less than 5'9" can stand up. Although I love my chamber. It's going in for some minor repairs of a window this week, and it'll be back in a few days. They have excellent service there. The chamber, what I do is I have with my dual compressors, I actually have an ozonator, which we also sell. And the ozonator feeds in ozone for a 30-minute period during the chamber life, so that you actually are, under Henry's law, compressing it into the cells and tissues to optimize oxygen. It kills off pathogens, acts as an anti-inflammatory, and one of the most powerful stimuli for your stem cells. Now, if you take the stem cell matrix of mountain red velvet, you take microdose growth hormone, you take supernox to release growth hormone, you take the other nutraceuticals like Indiamese and our Vitamineral Max Minerals Plus and all our special biomolecules for modulating aging and supporting metabolism, like Vitamineral Max Minerals Plus, etc., cell detox glutathione, etc., the right fatty acids of Nutrifos, phospholipids, and Neurogen, which is docosahexaenoic acid. Now you've got the fuel, you got the oxygen, you've got literally like an engine in your cells, a carburation. So we have also the Grand Dive E series, which is a particularly large one. It's a 40-inch chamber. It has an external mount on it, and they even have a new one now that actually is designed to actually allow you to put someone in the chamber on a wheelchair, or on a gurney. So they made them ergonomically so easy. They're bright, they're thin-walled, extremely strong materials. Very quiet, doesn't get hot, because when you compress air you create heat, but this system, he has developed a system to prevent heat developing by dissipating it external to the chamber. No other hyperbaric chamber does that. You also don't need 100% oxygen in order for you to have the maximum effect. So I tell people, you can purchase these chambers, you can lease them. They're 100% write-off against your taxes. All you have to do is have a needs statement that you need this particular chamber for a certain condition. It won't cost you a cent, actually. That's the point. It won't cost you a cent to do this. And I tell people, even if you decided to sell it in 2 years, you'd retain about 70% of the value. No one, once they get used to a daily routine of going in for an hour or two in their chamber, and they can either sit in there and listen to music because the side walls have speakers, or they can meditate, or they can go on their laptop. My chamber is big enough that I can have a director's chair and a small triangular chair on the side, so 2 people can go inside there. My friends down the road there, one's a district attorney, the other is a criminal defense attorney, love to come up and hop in the chamber and just relax and talk. And if they've been, as I say, too many legal parties, they can recover very quickly because one of the shows that I find particularly funny is the booze traveler guy, and he's on all kinds of these crazy hangover cures. The first thing you want to do is you simply want to stop the free radicals, but oxygen is one of the best. And if you're trying to stop inflammation to your brain because your relative has, say, Alzheimer's or optic neuritis or multiple sclerosis, you want to get oxygen there to turn off the inflammatory reaction. So that's just an interesting discussion about the Summit to See hyperbaric chambers. And if you go through our site, you're going to get a better price than anywhere else. You're going to get a better site than anywhere in terms of the actual most advanced current levels of chambers. They're also working on clear or transparent chambers as well as the higher chamber. And the new one now, of course, is the one where you can access through wheelchairs. The other thing I would like to talk about is some of the other technology. I'm working on an ebook on Zika virus that will be available probably within the next few weeks. I will be on Art Bell's show with Heather Ward as the host for Art on February 10th from 9 to 12 Pacific time on February 10th. That's coming up. I'm doing position papers on basically every major issue that's before us in this election cycle year, whether it's immigration, healthcare, foreign policy, the policy in the Middle East, etc. I'm going to write position papers on each one of them. And I challenge people to call in and ask questions. And again, the main thing is there's no such thing as a stupid or bad question. We want to make sure the dialogue is that we provide solutions for literally every health problem as well as every geopolitical and human problem on the planet. And I don't like the characterization of left or right. You know, we need to be pro-people. The ancient Cohens, which I'm a descendant of, were basically the public health providers and the doctors and the high priests that would be called by the draw of straws in one of the 24 cycle families to go into the Holy of Holies and Yom Kippur. What we need is a system where we are pro God's children, pro humanity, and not pro greediness, collection of wealth in the hands of a few global billionaires, or the other extreme is over controlling socialism that wants to tell you what to think, like Islam or communism. We'll be back in a moment. Your questions, 800-259-57. The Nutrimedical Report. I want to mention a couple of details about consultations. If you're an elite customer, which means you've ordered it 6 times in the last 12 calendar months, or $1,000 order, you get access to quick answers, which is brief answers in terms of nutraceuticals by phone or email. I'll return your call or your email. If you are not an elite customer, which means you don't order regularly, you are going to be requested to fill in an email or phone consult. There's a little PDF says, download information sheet. That is a multi-paged PDF form, which is a functional medicine intake form that I've designed that will help you to provide the kind of information I need in order to provide a proper answer and recommendations. I also recommend you send your paragraphs of your medical history that you want to provide, your narrative, which is additional, but you need to have the primary form filled out. And then also if you want to attach, and it's important to do this, to attach any scanned imaging, laboratories, surgical reports, anything else that you think is relevant, including alternative medicine care. And then if you're wise enough and have a QRMA machine, attach that file. Now, people who have QRMA machines, they will receive a free analysis twice a year on each of the family members of their immediate family. Anybody outside that, if you do a scan, they need to, number one, you can charge them for the scan if you want to charge them for doing the QRMA. That's up to you. But if they want a consultation after, they need to send a compressed file of the QRMA and request and fill out a consultation, either an email consult, and it's per email, not an open-ended thing where they just pay once and they get multiple emails. It's per email, and it's per 30 minutes by phone consultation. You can see that fee there. The reason is we want to make sure that people that receive the kind of information, number one, get the proper best analysis, and number two, don't waste my time to get recommendations and then proceed to go elsewhere thinking that they're going to get equivalent products elsewhere on the internet or elsewhere in terms of their health providers. Most doctors are even doing alternative medicine are doing it at what I call the entry level, which means it's pretty Mickey Mouse. And you have to understand that I can act as a mentor if we do have to have a person on the ground, whether it's a surgeon or an alternative medicine doctor or chiropractor, etc. But you're going to need my consultation in order to oversee the care. And this is going to help you get much better quality out of the service. It also ensures that we get proper provision to support what we're doing here at Nutrimedical to provide you the very best care. I also recommend if someone is really serious and has the resources, they go beyond just getting a QRMA, but get a bioplasm expert or clinical machine. And I'm writing up an ebook on the bioplasm. It's really important to understand that this is a version of the Russian Metatron, the most advanced diagnostic machine on Earth. And they've done comparative studies comparing it to MRI, ultrasounds, and X-rays, etc., in terms of identifying disease. It can find pathogens, pathology, cancer, blocked arteries, even physiological changes before disease declares itself. You can actually see those on the chan. And you can also do a change in the bioplasmatic body doing metatherapy and vegetotherapy, where you actually imprint frequencies on specific things. You can actually test the frequencies of medical drugs and or nutraceuticals to see if it matches and helps to change the harmonic resonance of the body to heal. So I can log on to TeamViewer 10 and look at your data once you've done the tests. I can also do a live test where I'm actually participating, and you can be anywhere in the world, and I can log on to TeamViewer 10 while you have the hydrophones on and you're undergoing the study. A brief study can take about 15 to 20 minutes. A normal length study takes about an hour. And a full complex study, which includes right down to specific cells and even sections of DNA and biomolecules, can take 2 hours. So it's a pretty extensive process, but if you want to do it, I can do what I call functional medicine or telefunctional medicine pretty well anywhere in the world. Now with the QRMA, all you have to do is do the 1-minute test and send me the compressed file, but I strongly recommend you first read the Dr. U book. Dr. U book basically is going to transform medicine. What it would mean is we can set up, for example, peripheral sites where people can get testing done and do a history. I theoretically could put in specific algorithms to actually make a lot of this automated, but it doesn't have the what I call the intelligence of going beyond just an automated history and algorithmic artificial intelligence. So what I strongly recommend is people do that, get the Dr. U book, realize that they do a functional medicine history, which is way more involved. Then it looks at environmental toxins, it looks at genetics, it looks at organic acids, it looks at functional conventional tests, X-rays, labs, 23andMe, Prometheus analysis of your DNA, epigenetics, organic acids. I mean, functional medicine is way more involved than regular medicine. The average doctor, if I was to train them in functional medicine, would take an additional 3 years after medical school for them to come up to a point where they could be, I consider them to be competent. 3 years, and that would be following me around day and night learning these things. Now, if you listen to the show regularly, you will become Dr. You'll learn how to say no to your doctor about certain things that are bad. I call blacklisted drugs that shouldn't be given to anybody, like HMG CoRe reductase inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, amiodarone, etc. Antidepressants. These are all drugs that I strongly recommend no one get in any circumstances. There are other drugs that are quite useful. Glucophage, okay. Mild diuretics are okay, but you have to watch your electrolytes. There are certain things like ACE receptor blockers that temporarily are good until you get your own natural ACE receptor blockers working, like aged garlic, which is in the cardiovasc, or Allicin Med. It's important to understand that our antipathogenics are far superior to antibiotics. Many of these antibiotics cause massive problems. For example, I just read the other day that was a young mother that gave her child a form of ibuprofen and got a Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which basically, it was horrible. I mean, because the child got deforming Stevens-Johnson lesions on their face and body. It was just horrendous what happened. They get these, bullous lesions all over their body, and their mouths can't eat, and they have to be basically tube fed or given a hyperalimentation line. It was a horrible mess, and this is from conventional drugs. When you take conventional drugs, they can be sneaky too. You can be taking a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory and destroy your joints because the joints go dry, and although your pain is less, you're destroying your joints and eventually will require joint replacement. You can be taking drugs that you think are okay, like beta blockers. And of course, if you take those as a male, you're going to have the quadruple problem of becoming fat, bald, stupid, and impotent. And if you're female and you take the wrong drugs, you're going to increase, for example, most of the injectable female hormones, create a 16-hydroxyestrone adduct of DNA, and increase dramatically the incidence of cancer. If you also don't know that you've been drinking toxic water and your body is building up bisphenol A and other we call xenoestrogens, you're going to increase the risk of breast cancer. In fact, I had a recent consultation of a lady that unfortunately developed breast cancer, had a bilateral mastectomy, radiation, and chemotherapy, paint by numbers chemo I call it. without testing the genetics of the cancer, and she's a mess. We're going to try to rescue her, but it's going to be a big job. We're going to firstly help to build up her immune system so she can fight the existing cells, turn off the mother cell or the cancer stem cell, and help heal her body so she'll actually start to recover. She may require a stem cell transplant if necessary. We can do that autologously from her own body. But if she's already had chemo and radiation, she's damaged her bone marrow, so she probably needs to have an external one, like Nutrimedical and their clinic in Tijuana or in Astana, Kazakhstan. Or we can get stem cell transplants in other countries, which we have access to. The important thing to understand is that there are pathways, but you're not going to find it in conventional medicine. They have a very small tool chest of what they're going to do and offer for you. Functional medicine includes everything. If we think you need neurosurgery or cardiac surgery or whatever, we're going to provide it for you. We're going to recommend that that's what you have to have done because you've gone too far and you need to have that done or you're going to die or have a horrible complication. But we'll help to steer you through that and make you wise enough to know when to say yes and no, whether it's medical care, alternative care, chiropractic care, whatever, so that you'll know how to fix things. If you have osteoporosis, for example, you're often told to take bisphosphonates and other drugs that can be very dangerous. They can cause a rupture of the lower esophagus, and it's mediastinitis that can be lethal. They also increase bone density, but they don't increase bone strength because they destroy the osteoblasts and the fibroblasts that lay down new type 1 collagen that's a rebar inside your bone. So you need to understand that when your doctors tell you that they're going to reverse your bone density, these doctors are stupid. They do not know what they're doing. They're trying to increase the crystallization of bone without proper rebar in the bone in the first place, which is 42% of the dry weight. So we'll steer you through it, and we'll make you doctor you, but get the book. Realize that we will eventually replace and augment things so that the primary health providers and the specialists will know that no matter what specialty they are, if you get your doctor to contact me, I'll make them a better doctor in an hour. Just by adding a few things to their armamentarium of how to make people recover better, survive well, and heal better afterwards and have less pain.